Presented by the UGA Bookstore. My name is Brandon Adams. I'm happy to be at the UGA Bookstore here in Athens tonight. I've got Terrence Edwards here there as well, and we just got the chance to see a great Georgia victory over the Auburn Tigers, 27-6. And Terrence, one of the things I had been wondering about was, would a game like this feel as good in October? We're used to seeing Georgia and Auburn in November. That's when we've enjoyed Georgia wins in this series the last few years. Would it still feel as good in October? Would things be as good? Well, I'm happy to report that here in Athens tonight, Terrence, it feels just as good to beat Auburn in October as it has in November for all these years. Just as good in front of 20,000 as it typically has in front of 93,000. Beating Auburn never gets old, no matter what the context is around the game. Tonight was a great night to be a Georgia Bulldog, and I know you feel the same way I do about that.
I do. It doesn't matter if it's in October or November. I get opportunity to rub it into my good friend, a big brother of mine, Takeo Spikes. I get to rub it in his face for another year.
That's exactly right. And, listen, when you grow up like you did and you know Takeo well, a lot of these Georgia guys know these Auburn guys really well. A lot of these Georgia and Auburn players had a chance to choose either school they wanted to go to. There are a lot of ties like that, right? Whether it be, guys that you grew up with or these guys now, there's always going to be a lot of crossover between the Georgia guys and the Auburn guys because, Auburn as a school is just really close to UGA, certainly really close to the state of Georgia. There are a lot of those bragging rights a game like this provides for you.
Oh, most definitely. There's a lot of Georgians on the Auburn team. So this is I consider, in my opinion, the second best rivalry in Georgia history. I still like the Florida rivalry first, but then I like the Auburn as well because it has so many crossover with the players that has played with each other or played against each other in some shape, form, or fashion in high school and youth football as well.
So there's a lot I want to get into from tonight's game. Obviously, we're going to do a lot on Stetson Bennett. We're going to do a lot on this stifling Georgia defense. There's a lot to break down there. But as a way of just kind of getting started, maybe inviting some folks to comment, Terrence, would you mind just giving me some of your general thoughts about what you saw tonight, what you liked from Georgia as we kind of get into this, and we'll start breaking down some more of the specifics from the game. But generally speaking, what did you like from what you saw from the Dogs here tonight?
I think our O-line played better tonight. We didn't have these massive holes that we saw tonight last week. So I'm going to give credit tonight to the offensive line for producing some holes that the running backs could run through. Defensive line, as usual, played well. So the trenches, I thought tonight probably was the MVP of this game.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And, to see Georgia play better offensively after that had been a real concern going back last week, I think for a lot of people, there's going to be that sort of sigh of relief kind of breathed here. Not a perfect game for Georgia. Obviously, there's some scoring opportunities in the second half that you'd have liked to have seen Georgia maybe capitalize on a little bit more. But, Terrence, I think last week a lot of Georgia fans were watching this game against Arkansas, kind of maybe left to wonder, is this going to be a scuffling offense this year? Tonight, against what we would say on paper is a better defense than what Arkansas showed, although Arkansas had a pretty nice performance here tonight. The Georgia offense seemed to come alive and play a little bit better. I thought that Todd Monken had a pretty creative game plan. If you're a Georgia fan and you want to be optimistic about what this offense may be able to do, the rest of the upcoming season, tonight certainly provided you that kind of opportunity, did it not?
I think so. I think now we got to go back and look at Arkansas defense and probably give them a little bit more credit than we gave them with them winning tonight and holding that Mississippi State offense to, I think, 14 points or whatever, but coming out with a victory. Now, our offense going to and destroying Auburn's defense, who we thought would be a better opponent. We got to give Arkansas some credit, and maybe we can relax a little bit. Like I said last week on my Twitter play, let's calm down because the first game of the year, now the second game of the year, I'm sure you're going to be a lot of people that just much more relaxed and getting ready for Tennessee next week.
Yeah, Richard Pollard says that he liked to see Kendall Milton get the football more. That was one of the things I did think was interesting about tonight's game is that Georgia was able to rotate a lot of running backs. There was the situation where James Cook leaves the game, goes back to the locker room. His night was really done at that point in time. We saw, a lot from Zamir White here tonight. But then beyond that, you got Milton involved a little bit. You got certainly Kenny McIntosh involved in the offense tonight. Before it was done, Dejon Edwards got his chance to carry the ball there too. I think one of the things that would be demoralizing if you're an Auburn fan or frankly one of the SEC schools that looks in on having to play Georgia over the course of the next few weeks is the fact that Georgia just sends waves of talent into this game. A lot of rotation at running back. Kendall Milton, who my understanding had spent some time this summer kind of dealing with a little bit of a hamstring injury, was seen in a black non-contact jersey at times during some of the summer scrimmages. Maybe the fact that he was a little bit more involved in the offense tonight suggests that he's ready now to be a little healthier and maybe a bigger part of the story as the season goes along.
I think so. This is running back you. So we're going to produce running backs year in and year out. And they just showed tonight that there's going to be no drop off if whoever's in is a freshman, if it's Kendall or is it Dejon Edwards, there's not going to be a drop off in production.
Travis McCullough talking about Todd Monken. I like the Todd Monken game plan tonight. Certainly seemed like he was, much the same way as last week when really even in kind of a somewhat meager statistical performance, a lot of guys found a way to touch it. I thought that Georgia tonight really exploited a lot of weapons once again. It was great to see Kyrus Jackson. You knew that Georgia was going to need a veteran presence from the receiver position. Kyrus stepping up in a big way tonight. George Pickens finds the end zone. Obviously, Zamir White has a rushing touchdown there as well. A lot of playmakers, potential playmakers for this team, got a chance to touch tonight. That was great to see.
It's great to see. You can't always rely on that stud. Teams are going to try to systematically take Jordan Pickens away. So you got to have a receiver step up, and Kyrus Jackson was that guy tonight. So we're just going to have more playmakers, more of the defense can't just load the box up against our run or try to double team George Pickens.
Joseph Binder agrees with you that he thought the offensive line also played much better tonight as well. How much of that would you attribute to the fact that there's the change at starter for right tackle? We wondered if there would be, the rotation at center there. That's not exactly the way that went down, but Warren McClendon did get his chance to be a starter there at right tackle. Seemingly this offense was also, offensive line pretty dominant on the left side tonight. It certainly seemed like in the early stages. How much would you attribute what you saw from the line tonight, the fact that they do make the personnel switch and they give McClendon a chance to be a starter for the first time after Owen Condon got that nod against Arkansas last week?
I think as an offensive line, like I said last week, they're the tightest knit group. They all five have to work together to be very successful. So I think Coach Smart and the crew went back, and as he said before, he's going to put the best five out there. So I guess he considered Warren Clinton as one of the best five tonight, and it proved that move was successful because we went out and ran the ball well.
I'm going to get some YouTube comments coming up in a moment. I'm going to do a kind of a deep dive on Stetson Bennett's performance as well. It's the Dog Nation postgame show. We're live at the UGA bookstore. Prentice Russell also bringing up the job that the Georgia defensive backs did on the Auburn receivers tonight. We wondered how that Seth Williams matchup would go down for Georgia. It looked like to me that Tyson Campbell at times was really blanketing him with good coverage. Anthony Schwartz may be the fastest player in the SEC, but you also saw Georgia guys for the most part kind of running step for step with him tonight. Terrence, I know you love receiver play and you even respect it when the opponent has good receivers. Auburn's obviously got a good crop. How did you think the Georgia secondary did in guarding against those guys tonight?
I think overall they did very well. I think I saw a switch. I think Dane was on Seth Williams for a while, and I think Kirby Smart made the switch that Tyson Campbell was going to follow him all over the field. And he's a bigger, faster, better matchup for Seth Williams, and he did an awesome job. And number one for them, Schwartz did get by us tonight on two occasions, but the defensive line put so much pressure on Bo Nix that he wasn't able to throw two accurate balls to him that would have been big plays. So kudos to the defensive line for helping the secondary out tonight.
CB says this may be the best secondary I've ever seen at UGA. Terrence, for me, the thing that makes it so good is the fact that you're able to play so many guys there. I mean, think about this. Georgia had, from a football standpoint, a pretty big catastrophe tonight in that Richard LeCount was exited from the game because of a targeting call. I think the call in itself is going to be pretty controversial because it certainly seemed like LeCount was leading with his shoulder. Now, maybe he got the receiver too high, but I'm honestly not sure how he's supposed to avoid that. But the point, though, is that should be a death knell for many teams when you lose your leader, when you lose one of your most pivotal players. LeCount had 2 interceptions last week against Arkansas, and yet Georgia subs in Christopher Smith, and playing them, as you said, playing a multitude of quarterbacks, they can try a bunch of different guys on a receiver like Seth Williams. I think the thing for me, Terrence, is what makes this Georgia secondary so effective is the sheer number of players that it can play. rotate and substitute a lot at safety, but in the cornerback spots and certainly the star position, they can just, substitute at free will. It's amazing how many capable players they can run out there.
Exactly. And this is coming from a wide receiver who is an offensive guy. To me, Richard LeCounte, that is not targeting. The receiver is already lowered his aiming point. So Richard hit him with his shoulder. So I don't know where else you can hit him when the guy's almost sitting on his backside. So I didn't think that was a targeting penalty. But as you just mentioned, Georgia could really throw a lot of defensive back at you. They don't really necessarily rotate in the safety position, but in the front end and star position, I mean, we got three guys that are cornerbacks that with Tyson Campbell, Daniels, and Stokes that can lock down anyone. So they have a variety of players that they can throw at a variety of receivers.
Bill Kibbe says the Arkansas win for Georgia looks better now than it did on the heels of Georgia also getting a nice win against Auburn. We'll talk more about these scores from the SEC before we're done here on the Dog Nation postgame show. We're presented tonight by the UGA bookstore, and certainly that's where I am at tonight. Terrence back in his home, me here at the UGA bookstore. So if you're in Athens, I've seen, some of our, friends stopping by to say us here tonight. So if you came to the game or you get a chance to come to one of the games this season, pop on up here to the second floor of the UGA bookstore. I'd love to see you. And don't forget that when you're getting stocked up, whether it be in the game, in the stadium, home gating this year, no better way to get stocked up for all the apparel than you need than right here with the UGA bookstore. It's all the brands you've come to know and love. The Nike, the 47 brand, the Tommy Bahama, the Vineyard Vines. The only place you can get the UGA 10 line from Peter Millar is the UGA bookstore. Big autograph signings before each and every game. It was Garrison Hurst and Vince Dooley before the game this week. Next week, another great collection of autograph signings as well. Coach Dooley going to be back here. I understand again, Clint Bowling going to be here, the former Georgia offensive lineman. That's a part of the pregame festivities before each and every game here at the UGA bookstore. Big autograph signings, a chance you get stocked up for yourself and all the UGA fans in your life. They are here at the UGA bookstore. Make sure you check that out. All right, Terrence, let's talk about Stetson Bennett's performance for a moment. We'll get more comments in just a little bit. I think the thing that I'm left with, Terrence, and I'll admit this is not what I thought I would be saying to you on our show here tonight, but I know there's a lot of quarterbacks, and obviously we were all excited about seeing DeJuan Mathis get a chance to play last week. The fact that Kirby Smart made the announcement this week that JT Daniels was cleared to play. Daniels may eventually be the starting quarterback for this team. But Terrence, tonight, based on the way that Stetson Bennett played, not a perfect game, but an effective game for Stetson Bennett.
Yes.
Terrence, I thought he went a long way towards staking his own claim to be QB1 for this team, to be the starting quarterback on the basis of the way that he played. Let me show you a few stats here that if you look at Bennett as a quarterback against Auburn tonight and compare him to previous Georgia starting quarterbacks, he actually fares really well. Tonight, Stetson Bennett goes 17 of 28 for 240 yards. He throws a touchdown. You compare that to Jake Fromm a year ago, 110 yards, and he does throw 3 touchdowns, but Bennett more yards tonight. Also more yards than what Fromm threw for in 2018. 2017 the same way. Go back to Jacob Eason in 2016 when Eason threw for 208 yards. Stetson Bennett surpassed that total in a win tonight against Auburn. Same thing for Grayson Lambert in 2015. You go back to the beginning of this kind of Georgia streak against Auburn back in 2014 when Hudson Mason threw for 123 yards. These were all starting quarterbacks at Georgia, Mason and Lambert and Eason, and then the last 3 years of Fromm. Terrence, these were all Georgia starting quarterbacks without question. No one doubted their ability to lead this offense. And yet I think for a lot of people, Stetson Bennett, because of where he started the season on the depth chart, people assume that he'll eventually be surpassed. But based on these numbers tonight against a top 10 team, against a very good Auburn defense that played well a week ago against Kentucky, what else could Stetson Bennett do than to make his case to be the starting quarterback than the way that he was able to play tonight?
I don't think he's out there doing what he's supposed to do. He's a football player. He's out there leading his team. I'm very impressed the way he handled himself in a hostile environment, even though we're at home and not as many fans. This is the oldest rivalry in the South, and he handled himself tonight like a constant professional. And I enjoyed watching him today. And I got the feel, BA, there's like, is this like a Corey Phillips type feel that he just took the team and just ran with it? I mean, and didn't relinquish his role until the next year, until David Green eventually became the starter. But I just feel like when Corey took the helm our 2001 season, he took control and it was his team. I feel like Stetson is doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Tonight, Stetson, to me, made this feel like his team. And I don't want to overdo it because obviously the rigor of a season like this is a challenge to make its way through. But I did find myself watching this game tonight thinking a little bit less about when JT Daniels might be able to play and when's he going to come in and save the day. I found myself thinking less about that just simply because what Bennett was giving to Georgia tonight was exactly what it needed. A quarterback who's capable of delivering the ball to playmakers. Not, Bennett's not going to win the Heisman Trophy. He's not going to be a first-round pick. But what Georgia needs is a distributor, someone that can get the ball out to guys in space and let them do the stuff they needed to do. And what Bennett did tonight for Georgia is plenty good enough to win most of the games that Georgia will play this year.
I think so. I think he did his job. That's all you have to do is do your job. He was able to get the ball in the playmakers' hand and let the playmakers do what they're there to do. So as a quarterback, he didn't try to do anything that he couldn't do. He's an accurate passer. So he just put the ball in positions for the receiver to catch and for them to do what they do after they catch the ball.
Tennille Calvino says we all love Bennett. And Terrence, for me, to go back to Tennille's comment, for the Georgia quarterback situation the last few years has been kind of the source of controversy at times, maybe at times the source of frustration, and all of those issues have been well documented by now. But when you have a guy like Bennett who kind of steps in kind of surprising fashion, when he plays better than his recruiting profile suggests that he ought to be able to, when he plays better than his physical characteristics maybe suggest he's supposed to, I do think that becomes a really fun story for Georgia fans to get behind. And listen, ultimately, Georgia fans just want a quarterback who plays well, and they'll cheer for that guy no matter who that it is. But when it is someone like Bennett who is kind of working on his own feel-good story, the same way that other Georgia players kind of have their version of a feel-good story, I do think Bennett becomes easy to rally around because of this.
I think so. A guy who came to Georgia preferred walk-on. He just wanted to play, end up leaving, going to junior college and coming back now as a scholarship player. I mean, that is a perfect story, a great narrative for this season. I hope he continues to go out and keep proving these recruiting services wrong because nobody can really determine the heart of a lion, and he really has the heart of a lion. He understands the quarterback position.
Well, this is something you've said a million times, whether it be, guys that kind of come from small schools or maybe guys that maybe have a low recruiting ranking. The idea that you've got to be, 5-star this and 5-star that, and you've got to go to a, 5,000 student school to make it in the big time in college football. I mean, there are countless examples of the fact that you can kind of come from anywhere and have any kind of background and ultimately make it at the college level if you want to work hard enough. And maybe Bennett's just the latest example of that.
Exactly. I have this fight all the time that people think you have to come from one of these 7A programs to be ready to play college football, as they call it big boy football. I came from AA football. My brother came from 2A football. So it doesn't matter. Your talent level will take over. And once you get on the campus and whatever school you went to, doesn't matter. If you could play, you could play. And Stetson Bennett can play football.
Yeah, no question about that. And go back to 2017 when Stetson was the scout team quarterback at Georgia. And Terrence, at the time, so many of the Georgia players that were forced to battle him, in those practices when Stetson was kind of playing the role of Baker Mayfield, so many of the Georgia players had such complimentary things to say about him. Bennett seemingly thrived in that role, and it's probably a pretty fun role to get a chance to be in. And, George, like Nicole Hardman has said glowing things about him. I mean, this is a guy that even in a scout team role in 2017 won over his teammates. And a quarterback's got to be a leader. A quarterback's got to be the kind of person that people kind of want to rally around. And for Bennett in 2017, even as a scout team quarterback, he was really given some credit for why Georgia felt prepared to go face the high-powered offense of Oklahoma. So if Bennett in that role as a scout team guy back in 2017 could rally people around, then it seems possible and certainly likely that he could also rally his teammates around him now in that starting role. This is not the storyline we thought we'd be talking about. It's not the storyline we thought we'd be covering, but clearly it's one that seems to be really fun for Georgia at the moment.
I think so. As a quarterback, you really have to win your teammates over. And he won his teammates over back in 2017 once he was a scout team quarterback. And he just kept his head down and he just continued to work. He never knew when his chance would come, but he stayed ready and stayed prepared. And when you stay ready and stay prepared, then you don't have to get ready. That's the old saying go. But he's doing a tremendous job, and his teammate is playing hard for him. You can actually see that on the field.
When you look at what SEC Dog says over here on YouTube, he says that Todd Monken actually sees mismatches, not like what James Coley would have done a year ago. Glad we finally have an OC. And, I'll admit, Terrence, I wasn't always happy with what I saw from James Coley a year ago, but I have really liked what Todd Monken has provided this Georgia offense right now. I thought the game plan was good against Arkansas if the results maybe didn't really provide all you would have wanted. And tonight, listen, I think Auburn's a good team. I think this is a tough matchup, and Georgia was clearly ready for it. This might have been a little bit of a coming out party for Todd Monken. I've always felt like that Georgia was that dynamic offensive coordinator away from putting himself in the thick of any national championship conversation. And maybe that's what Todd Monken provided for Georgia tonight.
I think so, but I think he really did a good job of. Everyone thought it was just going to be an air raid, that we just threw the ball all over the place. I don't know if the offense would have ran any differently if Jamie Newman would have been here, but we're still running the ball. I don't know how many carries we had tonight, but the ratio was in my opinion, was still about 60-40 run to pass, and I think he did a good job of mixing up the play action when we needed, and he just kept Auburn off balance tonight.
In fact, why don't we dive in and talk about that Georgia running game here for a moment, because that was one of the things I thought tonight that was going to be really important going into this game. Georgia only ran for 121 yards last week against Arkansas, fewer than 3 yards of carry there in that game. Auburn had also struggled in the ground game a little bit, going back to the Kentucky game a week ago. So who, the team that found the most success in the running game was going to go a long way towards determining how this game was going to be decided tonight. And it was clearly Georgia. I'm going to pull up some stats here and try to get some of that for you in just a minute. My internet's kind of playing tricks on me here a little bit. But Georgia clearly found more in the running game tonight, especially in the first half, really setting that tone. You pointed out a little earlier, Terrence, the offensive line played better this evening. I think that's obviously true. But, when you think about the fun of Stetson Bennett and the impact of Todd Monken, when you want to look for a bedrock reason that Georgia can win games going forward here, what Georgia does in the running game tonight might be as much of a reason for that as anything.
I think so too. Just looking at here the stats with Zamir White with 19 carries for 88 yards. That's 4.6 yards a carry. And we've always been waiting on James Cook to have a breakout game. And 5 for 41. That's 8.2 yards a carry. And as a team, we went 4.5 yards a carry. So you can really take those stats and feel good about it. We had 45 carries for 202 yards in this game. And if you can run the ball like that on a defense like that, the offensive line and Coach Monken has done a great job scheming up ways to get these playmakers the ball in the open field.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Is that last week there were some tough questions being asked about James Cook, and I think you and I both were of the mind in our post game show presented by the UGA bookstore that we were not ready to turn our back on James Cook yet, not ready to give up on him as a big part of the story. Now, ultimately, Cook's night doesn't end up being as nice as it could have been because he deals with an injury. But prior to that, we saw him showing some of that burst. We saw him getting off and having a little bit of success. That not only was this a good night for the Georgia running game, and not only did they play a multitude of running backs, there was a real opportunity for James Cook tonight to kind of establish why it was that so many people had a high sense of anticipation for him before the season started. The flash that we saw from him near the beginning of the game, that's a little bit of a reminder of what he can still bring to the table for you.
Oh, I think so. I mean, you look at him, 8.2 yards a carry. He only had 5 carries tonight. So imagine if he got 10 carries tonight, he would probably up over 100 yards tonight. But I've been on the James Cook bandwagon since he's been at Georgia. So we just got to continue to give him opportunities to show that talent that he has. And I think tonight was a good stepping stone against a good Auburn defense that the next game against Tennessee, hopefully he's able to play. Look like he has a shoulder injury. But if he has opportunity to play, we have to continue to use this explosive ability on the edges. And actually, he ran the ball between the tackles very well tonight.
I was fumbling around to find my post-game stats a moment ago. Terrence, like a true pro, stepped in and read them for you. I'll repeat some of what Terrence gave us. Zamir White, 88 yards, averages 4.6 yards a carry, finds the end zone a couple of times. We talked about James Cook. 5 carries, 41 yards. You could have seen a lot more from him. But then they find a way to get 6 carries for Kendall Milton, 6 carries for Kenny McIntosh. Dejon Edwards gets 7 carries. Really, a multitude of guys getting involved there and averaging 4.5 yards per carry all the way around. Better night for the offensive line. Good night for Georgia, rotating a lot of running backs. And a dangerous thing to think about if you're an opposing team, including Tennessee next week, getting ready to face this very, very potent Georgia attack right now, finding its legs with its ground game. Certainly that's the kind of thing that a lot of Georgia fans were hoping would happen, and maybe opposing SEC teams were hoping might not happen. But Georgia's a much more dangerous opponent when it is running the football like that. We'll take some comments, and then we're going to turn our attention to the Georgia defense here in just a little bit. It's our Dog Nation postgame show. We're presented tonight by the UGA Bookstore. I know it's late wherever you are, but we appreciate you gathering with us, talk some Georgia football. A lot of fun here this evening, getting a chance to do that. Kathy Aquavia Green, how about this, says that Stetson threw for more yards tonight than Auburn had total yards. And Terrence, that's a fun way to think about the complete domination that was this game tonight. That Stetson threw the air more than matching what Auburn did in totality. It's a pretty impressive performance right there.
I think so. You got to give your credit to that defense, though, man. That defense was really flying around. The defensive line had Bo Nix on the run all night. He wasn't settled at all. So you can get your D-line, getting the quarterback off platform, moving around, throwing the ball on the run and being inaccurate, then the secondary is going to have a pretty good day. So give kudos to that D-line for having a really good night tonight.
Reginald Johnson, not the only one to bring this up, so let me ask you about it. He talks about Darnell Washington here, who we saw those flashes from last week. There's the viral video where he, shoves people to the ground. He gets involved in the offense, gets a chance to catch the ball last week. Not as much a part of the story here tonight. Terrence, for me, this is a situation where I think UGA fans have got to be patient. This is still a young man playing in his second, college game. This is probably not a guy that was targeted in high school as much as, like, say, a Rick Gilbert was at LSU. I think there's still a little bit of a learning curve for Darnell Washington to get comfortable in the college offense here. I think he's going to have some big days in a Georgia uniform, and clearly there's going to be some hunger to see him involved right now because no one quite looks the way that Darnell does in a uniform, and people are seeing some of the stuff that Kyle Pitts is doing in Florida. But for me, Terrence, I think there's a real requirement for a little bit of patience to allow Darnell to kind of work into his role here in this Georgia offense.
Oh, I think so, man. I think Darnell Washington, his upside is tremendous. I think right now his biggest attribute that's going to help this Georgia team is out in the run game because he is 6'8", 260. So he's has the girth to help block defense line and you don't have to bring in an extra offensive line to secure the edge. So I think he will make plays at some point once given the opportunities, but in the run game, he's been tremendous.
Terrence, we're going to talk more about the defense in a moment, but Barry Watkins bringing up the fact that Bo Nix is really running for his life tonight. I don't know how many sacks Georgia got. I'll have to check that and see, but I do think it was very impressive the pressure that Georgia put on Auburn. I thought Adam Anderson really kind of got after that tonight. A lot of hurries, a lot of pressures, it seemed like, for him. And Bo Nix, to use the language the caller used, or I should say the commenter used, really did appear to be running for his life tonight, really did appear to be under duress a good bit tonight. Maybe not quite as many sacks as you'd like to have seen Georgia got, but they clearly put Bo Nix in an uncomfortable position now with the pass pressure that they had.
I think so. I don't think we had very many sacks tonight. We had a lot of pressures. Bo Nix is a tremendous athlete. He got outside the pocket and escaped, but a lot of his throws were inaccurate once he got outside the pocket.
That's right.
Adam Anderson did a tremendous job tonight with rushing the pass. He didn't get any sacks, but Bo Nix was able just to throw the ball away a few times. But we pressured him tonight, and a lot of those won't come up in the stat sheet. But those pressure really helped the defensive backs tonight. And you don't have to cover so long because now Bo Nix is on the run, trying to make plays outside the pocket. And the defensive backs did a great job of sticking with their defenders.
What I've said before is I think one of the most underrated defensive seasons in the Kirby Smart era for Georgia is what DeAndre Walker did in 2017. We think about him as being one of the team leaders in 2018, but in kind of a situational role in 2017, when he was the designated pass rusher, and he really played a fun position on this team where every snap that he took, he could just pin his ears back and just go. He had double-digit tackles for loss in 2017, sacked the quarterback in 2017. To me, that's an underrated performance that sometimes we don't give enough credit for. And I've always felt like Adam Anderson could thrive for Georgia much the same way Walker did back in 2017. The role that Adam filled tonight reminded me the most thus far of what Georgia once had when it had DeAndre Walker in that situational spot back in 2017. I think Anderson's built for that. I thought he was all over the place tonight. That was a fun thing to be able to see.
One thing that he can do, he don't have to go and fight with those big guys on every down, on run down. So when he comes in the game, he knows where he's there. He's there to pass rush. So he's fresh. He's fresh. And it was one play where he bent the corner. That was tremendous bend by a D lineman. And man, if we could get that and pass rush and don't have to blitz, our defense will be even better.
Frank Patterson mentioning the idea of the Florida performance against South Carolina. We're going to get into a lot of those other scores before we're done here tonight. Tom Gross mentioning Mark Webb, who does come away with the interception. That's a great thing to be able to see. And Terrence, I will say that Webb is probably one of those guys that we have a tendency to overlook from time to time because, you know, Tyreek Stevenson may be a more spectacular looking athlete. You know, DJ Daniel has the incredible speed, and obviously, you know, you pay attention to Tyson Campbell and guys like that. For that very reason, it was nice to see Webb step over and get the interception. I think that Webb is working on the kind of career in Georgia that is going to get the attention of NFL scouts at the end of this season. He's obviously an incredibly physical player. You know, he loves that star role. He can step in, and by star, I don't mean starring. I mean, you know, the star position, the nickelback spot. He loves that because he's stout against the run as well as he is in coverage. It was nice to see him get his name in the stat sheet, come away with the interception, get a chance to put those spike shoulder pads on. And that was a fun thing to be able to see.
Yes, he caused 2 turnovers tonight. Actually, he got the 1 interception, then he got the 1 fumble. We didn't get it, but he caused the fumble that Auburn got back. So he was all over the field. And I call him a Swiss Army knife because I've seen him on several. Even last year, he played multiple positions for Georgia, and they just get plug and play. When you're a plug and play guy, you have to find a role for those type guys.
Cohen Andrews asking a good question. I'll admit I don't know the answer to this. Terrence, I don't know what they said on TV about this. The status of Eric Stokes. We didn't see as much of Stokes, you know, after the early going here tonight. Did you recall them saying anything about that on TV at any point in time? And the kind of the scramble to get involved over here. I'll admit I never got my questions answered on Eric Stokes. It could be in the post game. We hear a little bit more about that from Kirby Smart, but I haven't heard much on Stokes. Have you heard much on him at the moment?
I didn't. They didn't say anything during the game of why he wasn't in very much. So no, I didn't know anything about it.
Let me pop over and get a few Facebook comments too, and then we're going to talk more about the Georgia defense here tonight. Daniel Lewis on the subject of Trey McKitty, looking forward to getting him back. Terrence, I did see Trey before the game tonight. He was in uniform. He was going through warm-ups. You know, it was hard to tell at the time if he was going to be a part of this game plan or not, but it's that next step when you can put the uniform on, when you can go out there and be a part of those, you know, warm-up situations. You know, that's an indication that you may be being a little closer to being involved in this Georgia offense. And I do believe, because of the stats that McKitty put up when he was at Florida State, that once he's fully healthy and able to play again, my assumption is that Trey McKitty will be a pretty big part of this Georgia offense, if I had to guess.
Well, I think so. I've heard a lot of great things about him coming out of camp. And I've went back and watched a few of the Florida State highlights with him. And he's a very athletic tight end that can really stretch the middle and contain the safeties in the middle of the field. So he's going to be a valuable weapon for this Georgia offense. And I'm excited to see him play whenever he's healthy to play, hopefully this week against Tennessee.
Kevin Mills says, was Trey McKitty's injury more serious than told? I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I know Kirby had told some boosters prior to the start of the season they were hoping he might get a chance to play week 1. But I think part of this is just kind of the evaluation. And sometimes that evaluation from a medical standpoint has to be ongoing. You know, you have to see how guys respond. I mean, obviously medicine is a science, but in terms of evaluating who's hurt, who's not, and how long they're going to be hurt, sometimes there's a little more art to that than science. It can be a little bit of an inexact science at times. All right, we're going to get more of your comments. Let me get this to you from Kirby Smart about the idea that Stetson Bennett could be the long-term starter for Georgia. Here's the quote from Kirby from the post-game press conference that right now he's the guy, and he's done a good job preparing for what we want to do. It's that first part of that seems interesting to me, Terrence, when he says right now he's the guy. I mean, I just think that's fair. It's one thing to do it 1 week against Arkansas, who's a team we don't think is going to be very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing to do it in a game like this, in which I think most of us would say that Auburn is one of the most important games that Georgia's going to play all season long. I would say that Stetson Bennett right now is the quarterback until something changes. If he were to start playing poorly, then obviously you open the door for that. And when JT Daniels is truly fully healthy and ready to go, maybe that evaluation, will be ongoing there at that time. But Stetson Bennett has absolutely played well enough that he deserves to be beaten out for this job. Otherwise, to use Kirby's phrase, he is the guy for Georgia right now, I would say.
Oh, I think so. And he will be the guy until he goes out and not play well. And I'm knock on wood, an injury occur. So if he continues to play like this, continue to lead his team, he will be the guy for the future. He's just playing lights out right now, so there's no reason to make a quarterback change.
Kirby Smart says, I want to thank all of our fans. It certainly felt like there were a lot more in attendance than there actually were. I got that sense too. Last week, Terrence, in Fayetteville, the atmosphere felt really fake. There was a lot of fake noise, and that's mostly what you heard. Yeah. Tonight, it felt really, I don't know how it came across on TV, but it felt like a real game. It felt like a real Georgia crowd. I know there's a bunch of Karens on social media complaining about the fact that I don't even know what the students were standing too close together. I guess Georgia fans dared have a good time tonight between the hedges, and that's going to get the folks on social media all worked up. And hall monitors out, complaining about all of that. But pushing that aside, Terrence, it was great to see Georgia fans having a good time in the stadium tonight. And it's nice to see Kirby Smart throwing a compliment their way, because this felt like a real SEC football game. And 20,000 people tonight found a way to really, I thought, be impactful. And it certainly looked like, from my perch up in the press box, they were having themselves a pretty good time as well.
Oh, I think so too. You could actually see it from the TV that they was having a good time. That they was loud, they was energetic, and they was into the game. So the fans definitely made a difference, because on the first drive, I think we had Auburn had 2 penalties. So you account that to the fans that was there. It was loud, and it looked like a college SEC night game.
I don't have an update on Eric Stokes. I can give you one on James Cook, who did go back to the locker room during the first half of this game. I think it was a wrist injury that Cook was dealing with. Kirby Smart called him fine, said that he could have gone back into the game. They just chose not to do that out of precautionary reasons. So I think that's good news. And Georgia's showing it's got a lot of depth right now beyond just those couple of running backs, the 2 veterans, Zamir White and James Cook. It's our Dog Nation postgame show. We're presented tonight by the UGA bookstore. I'm happy to have Terrence Edwards, the great former Georgia Bulldog, record-setting wide receiver, with us on the program. I'm here live at the UGA bookstore. That's been our home away from home for the last 5 years on our Dog Nation post-game show, and it's great to be back here again tonight. And it's been nice to see a lot of folks stopping by to see us. Our buddy Bob Tharp came by. He and his family, it was fun to be able to see them. Also fun to see so many other Georgia fans stopping by to say hello to us there as well. So when you're in Athens, when you come to a Georgia game, stop by here, stock up on all the apparel that you need for your home gating or your if you're lucky enough to be at a game, get decked out in your Georgia gear, all the brands you love. It's here at the UGA bookstore. And please, after the game, come by and see us. We're up here on the second floor of the UGA bookstore, really behind me tonight. I think it's kind of nice. We've usually had the backdrop before, but now you can just kind of see, the actual action behind me here. 1 floor down is where all the apparel is. You can stock up here. You can load up here. Not too soon to start thinking about some of those holiday gifts as well. The UGA bookstore is certainly a great way to go on all of that. All right, Terrence, let's talk some defense here for a moment, because here's what frustrates me a little bit. And look, I'll acknowledge that in 2020, you've got to have an explosive offense if you want to win a national championship. College football playoff has just proven that the last couple of years. But you've got Georgia, who, came very close to pitching a shutout last week against Arkansas, if not for the big play, the early touchdown against, for the Razorbacks. Tonight, really stifling Auburn, almost, choking them like an anaconda, just suffocating the Tigers here. And yet, nationally, Georgia's defense isn't going to get as much attention as, like, say, Florida's offense is going to get, or, what's going on in other places. And yet, when you look at the reason why Georgia is a real threat and a likely winner in so many of these SEC games, is because it just doesn't give up much, doesn't give up very many yards, doesn't give up very many points. And yet it seems like sometimes that defensive brand of football just doesn't get enough attention. Do you think the Georgia defense gets as much credit as it should get?
I don't think so. Because I think people want to see high-scoring games. I think people want to see offensive moving up and down the field. When you got a defense like Georgia, man, it's that old-fashioned junkyard dog that they don't give up very much. It's really tough to run inside, and if you try to run side to side, their team speed really shows. So this Georgia defense is one of the best defenses I've seen in a long time.
We'll give you some words from Gus Malzahn and his post-game press conference here coming up in just a few minutes. We'll also take some of your comments talking about the Georgia defense and the rest of the performance, as it feels great tonight to be talking about a Georgia win against Auburn, another dominant performance, 13 of the last 16. Georgia's won in this series, and it is a good time to be a dog fan here on a Saturday night. The Street of Athens won't be quite as crowded tonight, but the folks who are lucky enough to be here are certainly going to have themselves a good time. You want to talk about the Georgia defense? Hop on in here and get in the comment section on our Facebook, our YouTube. We'll continue to take some of those comments from you. Frank Patterson says he thought the turning point of this game was on the third down play when Mailman rolled out and hit Kearis Jackson. Yeah, Terrence, I know you'll agree with this. Kearis seemingly was there for Georgia so many times tonight when Bennett was trying to stay away from a pass rush, when he was trying to do those things. It seems like Kearis Jackson just kind of found a way to get into a seam or get himself in some green grass. This is a veteran receiver who really was a very valuable target for Stetson Bennett tonight.
Oh yeah, Kearis probably his best game is his college career. And he needs to step up. He's the veteran of that group. And I know I said earlier during the summer that we need a guy like him to step up, who's been at Georgia, who's played a lot of football, to step up and be that emotional leader, be that physical leader, be that guy that the younger guys can lean on. And he was that guy tonight. I mean, you got to give him credit tonight when teams really want to double Pickens and start doubling the other guys. Kearis got to be that guy to step up, and he's very dependable receiver. And you got a guy like that, you have to continue to get him the ball.
We're also talking about the Georgia defense a little bit here right now, too. Bruce Eklund, with that in mind, I know we addressed the Richard LeCount targeting call a little earlier. He wanted to know, did you think that was a good call, Terrence? How did you feel about the targeting call that cost Richard LeCount the rest of this game tonight?
I didn't think it was a targeting. I think the receiver was already in a lowered state, and Richard went in with his shoulder pass, and I don't know where else you can hit him at that point in time. The objective of the defensive back is to knock the ball loose, and I think if Richard would have done, if he wouldn't have done that way, the guy wouldn't have jarred the ball loose. I personally didn't like that call at all.
So I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that came with about 90 seconds to go in the first half, I think. Georgia, I mean, you hate to lose LeCount for the game, but I guess the one semi-lucky break is the fact that it happens in the first half as opposed to had it happen the second half. He'd be gone for the first half of the Tennessee game next week, which kind of looms as a pretty big game right now. So you hate to lose LeCount, but if you're going to have a bad call like that, or a call that kind of goes against you like that, better to have it in the first half so, he misses a game that Georgia had well in hand, as opposed to having to sit out the first half of a game in which you're going to really need LeCount to help set the tone for in the first half next week against Tennessee.
Almost definitely. We have to have him next week. He's the leader of the whole team, not just the defense. So we have to have this energy next week, because Tennessee is really looking like the old Tennessee. We have to have him in the back to shield the back end and just give the team the energy and the enthusiasm that they need to go out and win this game.
Ace Dog says, BA, talk about the defensive line being held all night and not getting the flags. Ace Dog felt like the defensive line was getting a little bit of a raw deal there. Terrence, did you see that?
There was a couple hold penalties that got called, but when you got a tremendous defensive line like this, there's going to be a lot more holding with Jordan Jenkins. And I tell you, I really like Jalen Carter. I like his potential.
Yeah.
Kirby has done a great job of bringing talented guys in that he could just rotate four at a time.
How about the fact that Jalen Carter also got some work tonight as kind of a fullback? You're talking about a creative wrinkle from Todd Monken. That's certainly an example of a pretty creative wrinkle right there, right?
I would not want to be on the goal line defense with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter coming at you. That's 600-pounder of grown man coming down on the power play. And that's a great wrinkle. That's going to be hard to stop in the future.
Kyle Bell says, "BA, what was your take on the corner play? Tyson Campbell looked great." He says, "I love it when an announcer slobbers all over a receiver and we shut them completely down." I've always felt like that Tyson Campbell had a really bright future at Georgia, going back to 2018 when he was playing a lot as a starter early in the season and kind of getting picked on a little bit. I never sold my Tyson Campbell stock. And last year, prior to his injury, and he really dealt with a turf toe situation, I think, for about 3/4 of the year last year. I think that Tyson Campbell really is coming to his own. We know he's got that world-class track speed. On a track, Anthony Schwartz is probably a couple hundredths of a second faster. On a football field, I'm not sure there's much difference between Campbell and Schwartz, to be completely honest with you. But Campbell's also got a little bit of physicality that he can kind of turn to there as well. He's not just a runner, in other words. Yeah, I think that Tyson Campbell absolutely is a major part of the story for Georgia, and you just hope you can keep him healthy this year, something that you weren't able to do for the most of the year last year, Terrence.
Oh, you're right. I mean, he's 6'2" with long arms, and he's actually a track guy, 10-300. So he has all the tools and all the physical tools to be an outstanding corner. So I think he took the challenge tonight, like BA. I think I could be wrong, but it just seems like he followed Seth Williams all over the field, and he took the challenge of that after I saw Dead Sea Danes on him a few times, but it seemed like later in the game, Tyson took that challenge to I want him and shut him down.
Interesting tweet from David Pollock, who says when it comes to Tyson Campbell, we're talking about here that Pollock says that he may be a true lockdown corner. And obviously we know that last season when Derek Stingley really emerged for LSU, that changed the fortunes of that defense. A true lockdown corner in a league like the SEC's is certainly incredibly valuable. Pollock also saying on Twitter that Georgia's defense tonight, if they hold true the rest of the season, they will be the best defense in the country. Pass rush, talking about what Anderson's doing, Ojulari, Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith. He says they have many more that can get after the quarterback. David was also talking about that this week on the ESPN College Football podcast as well. The fact that Georgia has so many guys, none of them play all that many snaps, but they can all be kind of effective. And it's really probably a shame that we haven't mentioned the name yet of Azeez Ojulari, who – when he was making tackles tonight, they were typically tackles for loss. We've wanted to see Georgia be more impactful in the backfield. That's what Ojulari did tonight. He really got in behind the line of scrimmage, and that's where he was doing the damage that he was doing. Azeez was a huge part of the story tonight for Georgia.
He exactly was. I mean, when you have tackle for loss and you put the offensive behind schedule, that is their job. I think the whole defense line did a great job in the run game. I think they did a great job in the pass game to keep Bo Nix really flustered tonight. And Ojulari was the guy that set the tone early, and the rest of the D-line followed.
Charles Felder wants to know about keys to victory for Tennessee. Charles, before we're done, we'll definitely talk about that. There's also the outstanding issue of what time the Georgia-Tennessee is going to be next Saturday. Certainly the likelihood of that being 3:30 on CBS, with both these teams now being undefeated. The chances of that would seem to be pretty strong here. Justin Sisk says UCF is losing in the moment. We'll keep our eyes on that a little bit. We'll also talk about some more scores here a little bit too. Let's see. Let's get a couple more Facebook comments here while we have a little bit of time. Prentice Russell says defense was in the backfield causing chaos. It was great to be able to see. Travis Hall says Azeez Ojulari should be able to be a first-round pick. Terrence Azeez is a lot like this Georgia defense overall in that 5.5 sacks a year ago, but because he's not playing the entire game and maybe not collecting as many stats as he could possibly collect, Azeez is probably one of those guys the NFL draft scouts may know more about than the average college football writer knows about. I would have a feeling that he is going to get some attention when he finally decides to put his name in the draft. He's going to get some attention here, whereas sometimes when it comes to all SEC teams and things like that, Azeez probably hasn't been quite noticed as much as you'd like for him to be able to.
That's a great point. But every time you watch him play, you turn on the tape, he jumps off at your TV. I mean, he's always in the backfield making plays. Led the team last year 5.5 sacks, and like you say, Kirby has done a great job of stockpiling talent, especially on the D line. They don't play as much as everyone else because he's keeping them fresh. So he's a team guy, so he doesn't worry about his stats. But every time he's out there, he's giving it his all, and he pops off your screen.
Trey Edwards says, keep pounding that rock. Our running backs look good. Yeah, that's certainly exciting to be able to see. And we'll continue to take these comments and talk to you about everything that's going on. But for now, though, I do want to pause here just for a moment and talk to you about our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. And, we had a good suggestion a little bit earlier what the moment of the game might be. The big catch that Kearis Jackson had that converts first down, that keeps the drive alive for Georgia. But for me, for the second straight week, and maybe I'm a little bit of a George Pickens homer here because I do love the way that Pickens plays, but I thought the 21-yard touchdown, it was a very nice throw by Stetson Bennett, nice extension by Pickens, got a chance to celebrate a little bit in the end zone. It's another one of those moments where Pickens just provides some real energy for Georgia. And to me, once Pickens makes that play, I think any chance that Auburn was going to be competitive in this game, I thought really kind of went out the window. There are a couple different ways you could have gone with this tonight, but for me, George Pickens' 21-yard touchdown was the Marco's Pizza moment of the game. Terrence, are you okay with honoring Pickens there in that spot for that?
I'm always good when somebody scores a touchdown. So a touchdown's always energized the stadium, energize the team. So if a guy able to get in the end zone, that was a great release by him as well. Able to release. I'm looking at a whole different level. Once they did a replay, I'm just looking at him like that's big time in the throw. When you don't have to adjust your body to catch the ball, that means that was a very accurate throw. So I'll give Stetson Bennett some credit on that as well.
How much does a play like that help Pickens and Bennett establish some chemistry with each other? We know that's important for quarterback, wide receiver. When you connect on something like that, where the throw's got to be pretty close to perfect, and where Pickens gets a chance to extend like that and make a big highlight play, how much does it help those two develop that chemistry with each other now?
Oh, that's big because you think about it. How much have they thrown with each other? I don't know if they've really had a lot of time to get to know each other, and quarterback receiver duo really have to understand each other's mannerisms. And now, I mean, this time is really big. Just 1 week now that they have had opportunity to really learn each other, and so they're learning on the fly in game. And that throw was awesome with an awesome catch.
Hey, when you check out Marco's Pizza, they got all kinds of specialty pizzas like the deluxe, the garden pizza, the all meat pizza. It can be cooked on a golden crust or the no crust in the specialty pizza bowls, which sounds amazing. There's also a great deal right now from our friends at Marco's Pizza. You can get a large one-topping pizza with 10 chicken wings or dippers. It's just $17.99. It truly is a Dog Nation game day favorite. You can order today on the Marco's app or online at marcos.com. And congratulations to George Pickens for being our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. We got a little bit of time left for your comments. We'll continue to take a look at those. We'll also finish up here with a look at what's left for Georgia, including a big game coming up with Tennessee on Saturday that we've been asked to break down. We'll make sure that we do that before we're done on today's show there as well. So we'll continue to make sure that we do all of that. And we'll look at some of the scores from around the rest of the SEC and around the rest of college football. In fact, let's do some of that right now as we kind of check in on some of the big scores from around college football here for a moment. Obviously, one of the big stories in the SEC was the fact that the Florida offense stayed hot again today. They get the 38-24 win over South Carolina. This game, at times, Gamecocks found a way to kind of hang around in this thing simply because the Florida defense is not playing a great brand of football right now. But Florida does pull away and get that win. How about the upset, though, for TCU knocking off Texas? Terrence, it's the second week in a row that Texas found itself in harm's way, found a way to slip out and get the win a week ago. But losing to TCU here today, it has not been a good season thus far for the Big 12 in terms of high-profile losses. Texas sustains another one of those for that league today.
Yes, I saw that game, and I got to give the TC defenders some love. They had a play where they did a zone read and faked the running back up the seam, and he was just off to the races, and one of the TC defense back chased him down. The running back got to the goal line, and he fumbled. So that play was a big play in the game that helped TC win that game. So you never know when that one play is going to be a deciding factor of a game. So give TCU some love today. But the Big 12 is they had two bad losses the last 2 weeks with Oklahoma losing last week.
And then Oklahoma was also in trouble at last check against Iowa State. We'll have to check on that score here in a moment. Tennessee, though, makes a little bit of a statement, beating Missouri 35-12, really kind of setting itself up for a big showdown of unbeatens next Saturday between the Dogs and the Vols. We'll talk more about that before we're done here today. Oklahoma State all over Kansas 47-7. Alabama knocks off Texas A&M 52-24. An upset in the SEC today as Ole Miss took down Kentucky 42-41. So Mark Stoops finds himself in the unenviable position of the Wildcats being 0-2 right now. Other SEC games ongoing at the moment. LSU, that's now gone final, all over Vanderbilt 41-7. So LSU a little angry last week about the way it played against Mississippi State. And Terrence, the Tigers have taken that out on the Commodores in a big way to the tune of a 41-7 final there.
Oh, that's big. I mean, coming off that loss, you knew that Big O's said something about one guy had 10 lows this week, so I'm pretty sure he was going to have them ready to play, and it showed today in the score.
And how about the fact that the biggest story maybe in the SEC a week ago was the performance of Mississippi State, pulling that upset against LSU, but they can't keep that momentum. They lose 21-14 at home today to Arkansas. Arkansas snapping a 35-game SEC losing streak, winning today against Mississippi State. I couldn't be happier for Sam Pittman, who I do truly have great affection for, and I believe will have a potential for a very successful career there in Fayetteville. He gets his first big win. It'll be a high-profile one. Not a good day for KJ Costello, throwing interceptions. Mississippi State not able to establish that momentum, and a big surprise here in the SEC as nearly a 3-touchdown favorite. Mississippi State loses at home. That is certainly an eye-opening final score.
It is, and you got it now. I know we was, as Georgia fans, panicked last week because we didn't play as well against Arkansas, but now you got to really give Arkansas some credit, man. Coach Pittman has really did a great job in these first two games, especially defensively, to come out and kind of shut Georgia down in the first half. Now you shut down this high-powered attack for Mississippi State to Castillo threw for a modest 303 yards with a modest 313 yards with 3 interceptions. So you got to get them kudos for their victory today.
A couple other scores, and this is not on our graphic, but I'll mention them anyway. Iowa State does pull the upset against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not a very good football team right now. Iowa State wins that one 37-30. Clemson knocks off Virginia 41-23. So that is that, and it sets up Georgia for a big game next Saturday against Tennessee. We were asked to kind of break this one down a little bit. And, Terrence, I would say that I think that right now Tennessee's one of the stories in the SEC thus far in terms of really a pretty consistent level of play over the course of the last couple of weeks. And as about 11.5-point favorite today against Missouri to go out there and cover that number easily. I would say that's a pretty good performance from the Vols thus far. And it seems like Jaron Garantano maybe settling down a little bit. Maybe Tennessee trying to find a little bit of a running game. This is clearly a better Vols team than it was certainly this time a year ago. They've been one of the hottest teams in the SEC, stretching back to last season after the Georgia game, really, when Georgia kind of throttled them there in Knoxville, especially in the second half. Tennessee's been playing a better brand of football for the most part since then.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I'm just looking at the stats here. As a team, they ran the ball 51 times today for an average of 4.5 yards a carry and 4 touchdowns. So Coach Chain is running the ball right now. So we're going to have to really, defensively, we're going to really have to stack the box and stop the running game. And it's crazy that I worked out with Jared Garantano this offseason. And
is that right?
He can really throw the ball. I mean, he probably get a bad rep, and it seems like he's been there for 12 years right now, but he can really throw the ball. So this is how I want Tennessee. As an SEC guy, I would love Tennessee to be good. I really do. I need them to be good in the SEC because just the historic of their program. So seems like Jeremy Pruitt has got them back on the right track, and it's good to see, actually.
When you talked to Garantano this summer, how was he feeling about the Jim Chaney offense? Obviously, we saw more comfortable in that. Yeah.
He loves me. He loves Jim Chaney and the offense. So he seems very comfortable and really enjoy learning from Jim Chaney.
I want to show you the rest of this Georgia schedule. We'll throw this up on the screen here for a moment. Georgia does play Tennessee next week. It's Alabama the following week. Then on the road at currently 0-2 Kentucky after that. Georgia off on Halloween before beginning a stretch that includes Florida on November 7th, at Missouri, Mississippi State, which is now 1-1 if the loss today to Arkansas, then at South Carolina and Vanderbilt to close out the regular season. And when you see that schedule for what Georgia has upcoming here, it's easy to look, I think, for some Georgia fans, that Tennessee game as a tune-up for Alabama the following week. But based on the way that Tennessee's played this last couple of weeks and some of the things that you were saying about the comfort that Garantano may have with Chaney right now, I don't quite think you can view this Tennessee game as simply an Alabama tune-up. Georgia probably made the Auburn game look a little easier today than some people thought it would, and Georgia maybe made a statement by doing so. But I still expect Tennessee to be kind of a tough opponent for Georgia next Saturday.
Oh, I think so. I think we cannot look past Tennessee because we have beat them very handily last year and the last few years. So they're a very much improved football team. And Jerry McCurry really has those guys believing that they can compete and have an opportunity to win the East. So we got to go in there locked, loaded, and focus and worry about Tennessee this week and then worry about Alabama once that Alabama game is scheduled to play. But no, we cannot look past Tennessee this week or they will beat us.
We've got about 2 minutes left. I want to squeeze in as many comments as we can while in that 2 minutes. Van West mentioning Tank Bigsby, the running back for Auburn. Obviously, this was, I'm sure, an important game for Tank today because of the backstory with that recruitment there. And I do think Tank's a good player, and I'm actually happy to see him get a chance to be such a big part of the Auburn offense. I would imagine we're going to be hearing a lot more from him in years to come. But Tank is, like so many of these players, that just has so much of his football storyline kind of wrapped up in like the Georgia Auburn recruiting stuff. So Bigsby was going to have a spotlight on him today. And I think the Tank kind of shows himself to be a pretty good player right now. And I certainly don't have a bad word to say about him, Terrence.
I don't either. He looks like a future star in my opinion. He caught the ball well. He looked explosive. So, Auburn won out on that. Good luck to the young man, but I think he's an awesome football player.
I think that's exactly right. Over here on the YouTube side of things, before we get ready to wrap this up, the Green Soldier says Tennessee needs to be taken very seriously. I'm guessing that when we get a chance to hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart this week, he's going to echo a very similar sentiment to that. Tristan West says, any updates on the injuries to Stetson Bennett, James Cook? So as far as the James Cook thing, Kirby Smart said he was fine, could have gone back in. I know TV caught Stetson Bennett kind of doing some stuff with his hand there as well. I don't think that was any kind of cause for concern, at least in terms of how it's been talked about, based on what I've heard thus far in the post-game conversation. That hasn't been talked about. Did you see that on TV where it looked like for a while there, Bennett may have been camera may have caught him kind of doing something with his hand there a little bit. What did you make of that when you saw it, Terrence?
Normal play where the quarterback hand hits a defender's helmet and it just numbs up a little bit, and he's just trying to work it out to get the numbness out. I don't think nothing that's very serious with that.
Let me finish with this. John Anthony says he thinks this SEC only schedule is a dream come true. Is it fun for you to also kind of be moving from sort of SEC team to SEC team? There's no cupcakes. There's no down weeks. Every week counts. Every week's a big deal. Every week matters. Is that fun for you?
It's definitely fun. I mean, this is, the big boy league. And I'm just going to say that right now. And every week you got an SEC foe. There's no cupcakes on the schedule. So you got to go and beat a SEC schedule. So that every week you really got to bring your A game to play or you would get beat.
Well, Terrence, we certainly appreciate you being a part of our Dog Nation post-game show tonight, presented by the UGA Bookstore. And by the way, huge thanks to the UGA Bookstore for being a home away from home for me when we are in Athens, but also decking out so many UGA fans in great UGA apparel. Make sure you check them out when you're in Athens. Stop by, stock up, get ready to go, whether it be home gating or whatever else. You can get everything you need at the UGA Bookstore. We certainly appreciate the UGA Bookstore for making the Dog Nation post-game show possible here this year. Terrence, I look forward to catching up with you again very soon. Enjoy the night as Georgia's a 27-6 winner over the Auburn Tigers here for the 13th time in the last 16 tries. Georgia is on top in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. That's good news. Terrence, have a great week. We'll look forward to talking to you again next week.
Have a good night.
And to all of you, good night as well. We'll see you next time on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Have a great night, everybody.